Thank you and good morning. So I'm presenting today on behalf of colleagues who are called to different continents. I hope you'll stick with me. I might fumble a little bit as this is my first time presenting this information. I'm newer to Mapillary. By a show of hands, who's familiar with Mapillary and what the team does? Okay, that's cool. It's about half, so I'll do the really brief overview. At Mapillary, our mission is to build technology and tools to help understand the world's places. And the way that we do that is through street-level imagery. We have a large, vibrant community of folks who capture and submit street-level imagery around the world, as well as targeted capture projects that partner us with a variety of companies and organizations. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about extracting GIS data from Roadway Imagery and just touch on how we speed that up a bit with computer vision and some of the organizations that we've partnered with. So when we think about open data, we have this sort of panacea. What do we mean? What are we talking about? In the context of today's presentation, I'm going to talk about street-level images and photos as data. So when you capture a photo, whether it's with your camera or mobile device, there are a variety of additional pieces of information beyond just your pixel values. You can have timestamps, geotags, and EXIF data telling you about the device and giving more context into what was captured. Photos can be a form of geospatial data, and they can be a form of open data, and that's a lot of what we focus on at Mapillary. So when you think about open data portals, it very often comes from a government, and geodata is very common, so a variety of shapefiles, geodatabases, and often some imagery, which is almost always in the aerial form. There's some non-geographic data available, but there are a variety of entities that host open data and some that host open images, like Open Data Swiss, and just Buenos Aires's open data portal, to name a few. But again, most of the focus on what's shared is aerial imagery. So there's also this concept of open photography, and it's been around for quite some time, but not often leveraged in a spatial context. More often, you're used to seeing aerial imagery displayed and shared in this way. And one of the things about open aerial imagery is that it's often quite aged, even to use the term stale. Capture of aerial imagery can be quite expensive and is often the purview of individual corporations or large governments with significant budgets. So when we talk about street-level imagery, and we can assign position and spatial context to these views, we start to think about all kinds of things that can't be easily extracted from aerial images. So just looking at these two scenes, you can sort of get a sense of not direct change over time, but contextual shift as a place ages and changes. So something sort of happened naturally at Mapillary. We're constantly engaging with governments and agencies around the world to try and see how we can help them bring their data online. And Stephen at the Vermont Agency of Transportation posted on Twitter one day that he had just catalogs and catalogs of street-level imagery captured on Vermont's roads and didn't have the individual time or resources to go through and map all of those data. And this is where Mapillary starts to come into play. We make street-level imagery usable for those governments by mapping at scale through computer vision. I'll go a bit more into that later, but I want to give the caveat that I am not a computer scientist. I come from a human geographer background and work on the operations side. So there may be some questions after the presentation. Feel free to ask them. And if I don't have the answer, I can certainly get it for you or refer you to one of my colleagues. So Mapillary works closely with the OSM community. Our tools are integrated into things like ID editor that allow the community to quickly leverage images that are captured and hosted on the platform. And on OSM, there are features like traffic signs and then individual map features that are really difficult to accurately extract from an aerial view that street level imagery or at least access to street level imagery makes mapping these items at scale a lot faster and more convenient. So there are a variety of entities who are already onboarding data onto Mapillary so that they can use it in a more rapid, productive fashion in North America. Utah, Florida, Arizona, in Europe, the nations of Estonia, Lithuania, a variety of Swedish cities, and the city of Amsterdam have started to onboard data. And we have work ongoing in Australia and South America with governmental partners as well. So why capture street level imagery? Context, context, context. Talked a bit about street signs, key things that can be inventoried and classified using street level imagery, and sort of gives you a different perspective on the geography that you're working with, a micro perspective. So using computer vision, our team has been able to successfully auto-extract map features, so allowing mapping to occur more rapidly and at scale, allowing images to be a large volume of images to be analyzed and for data to be extracted in a relatively short time. So this is really key for those small governmental organizations who might have the resources to go out and hire a contractor or task their own folks with capturing hundreds or thousands of kilometers of images, but then don't have the manpower or resources to digitize all of the data that's available in those images. So using imagery on Mapillary is possible through a number of different tools. I mentioned ID editor with OSM. In addition to tie-ins with OpenStreetMap, there is a ArcGIS Pro plugin for Mapillary. There are tools compatible with QGIS. One of the many ideas behind Mapillary is that we try to be as tool and data format as not agnostic as we can, meaning that street level images should be accessible in as many places as possible, and we should be able to ingest images from as many different pieces of hardware as possible. So for folks looking to build out new data sets or tools based on what Mapillary has built, we do have some good developer resources on GitHub, a developer homepage, a series of mobile SDKs for both Android and iOS, and then our imagery APIs, which if you're a power user, you can build some pretty fun and cool things as well. So there are more ways to capture than just through these expensive mapping rigs. Many of the folks contributing images to Mapillary do so using their mobile phones. People are out on the road capturing with 360 cameras like your GoPro Heroes and your Insta360s. And as more and more imagery gets added to the platform over time, and we continue to build up our training data sets, so annotating individual images and then verifying the quality of those annotations, our ability to extract map features on the fly and at scale improves rapidly. So right now there are over 800 million individual images on the Mapillary platform, and as that grows, our ability to help organizations leverage their images and create new map data just grows alongside. And one of the cool things about Mapillary is it's not just focused on one particular end. There are vulnerable places around the world where it's really expensive to get in there and start capturing data. But when all you need is a smartphone and the ability to later upload images over a faster connection, you can start to access and serve places that have been impacted by natural hazards and disasters, areas that may be impacted in times of conflict. So just the ability to take image capture from something that was restrictive, very restrictive in terms of cost, and make it more accessible to the community at large is something that we as a company and I personally am really excited to be a part of. So just sort of looking at the past and future of street level imagery, the US government started capturing major highways, I think actually earlier than the late 90s. Google Street View came around in 2007, and Apple started to introduce their in-house version of a street-level imagery product in 2019. What we would like to see is more open, accessible use of street-level imagery into the future, and that's a big part of what we're working on. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and open to questions.